This week on HomeKit News, the SwitchBot Universal Remote with Matter. Sort of. Welcome back everybody. In today's video we're looking at the SwitchBot Universal Remote, an IR and Bluetooth remote that can be exposed to Matter via one of the company's Matter bridges. The Universal Remote can control nearly all types of devices that use an infrared remote, like ACs, fans, TVs of course, and set-top boxes. If you have any SwitchBot devices, you can also control these via the remote, like the original SwitchBot bot, curtain motor, and even the company's own robot vacuums. The remote can also control devices and scenes within Apple Home too, which we'll look at in a bit. There's not too much in the box as you can imagine, but you do get this rather lovely looking universal remote of course, a user manual and some warranty cards, a SIM pin to reset the remote if required, and a USB-A to USB-C cable to recharge the battery inside the remote, which should last on average around 150 days between charges. One nice touch is that lifting the remote automatically activates the display on the remote, which whilst you can't tell from this screen, does actually display colour. As alluded to earlier, to get full use out of this remote you will need to pair it with one of the company's hubs like the Hub 2 or the new Hub Mini with Matter. You can still use the remote without a hub, but you'll be limited to controlling dumb IR devices only. Let's give the remote a closer inspection, and first of all, whilst the display isn't a retina display as such, it does look good and you'd have to look closely to see the pixels. The controls, which include a home button, a scroll wheel similar to the Apple TV remote, all work well and are nicely laid out. Some controls are clearly designed for TVs and set-top boxes with mute, volume and channel buttons for example. There are also 4 dedicated shortcut buttons that can be assigned to devices or scenes in the Apple Home app. The unit uses Bluetooth and IR, so you still have an IR transmitter on the front like any other remote, and on the underside there's a USB-C port to recharge the internal battery, and I'm always happy to see USB-C in use. So you will need the SwitchBot app to set up the device, but thankfully it's not complicated. So once powered on, it should automatically be detected via Bluetooth, and you just follow the on-screen instructions to begin the pairing process. Once the basics are out of the way, if you already have a SwitchBot hub with remote controls set up for your electrical devices, you can port these over to the Universal Remote via the app. You can also manually add a device, or you can even go for third-party control, which is where the Matter side of things comes in. So make sure you have everything required for this to work. I've added the remote to the hub and then exposed it to Apple Home via Matter. So if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see the tile for the remote itself. Once in the settings, you can see this essentially exposes 4 single press buttons, allowing you to add devices or scenes to them. So in one sense, it's a glorified wireless button. I've added some existing simple lighting scenes to these buttons, but I've also converted one of these to a shortcut which will essentially allow me to control my SmartWings Matter over Thread blinds with just one button press, as I'll demonstrate next. So in this first of 2 examples, I've already added a SwitchBot device to my hub and then to the remote. So in this case, I'm able to control my SwitchBot curtain motor with the on and off buttons like so. I don't need to program the buttons as such, so once the curtain motor is added, these buttons are automatically assigned to open and close. You can also see the display does have colour when needed. And I'll just scroll the wheel to get to my Apple Home option, and once inside you can see the 4 options I set up in Apple Home. These are controlled directly via the shortcut buttons below the screen, and because I set up a shortcut for my blinds, I'm able to control the opening and closing of the blinds with just one button press. Whilst these examples are using the hub to control the blinds and curtains as it uses Bluetooth, the companies say there will be an update that will allow the remote to control your Apple TV, as the remote that comes with it also uses Bluetooth. Hopefully that update will drop in July. There are a lot of options for this remote in the SwitchBot app, so diving into the settings you can see representations for the different remote options I already set up. I can rename any of these 4 shortcut buttons that are exposed to Apple Home, although this won't change those names in Apple Home. When it comes to the device's control within SwitchBot, you can see what sub-options will be exposed for each button. So in the case of the AC, button A will give you options for different AC modes, whilst the TV remote will show you a totally different set of controls. So each remote changes what's offered within the context of what it's controlling. One nice touch is that you can go into the SwitchBot app and locate your lost remote, as well as flash LEDs inside the buttons if you're looking in the dark. Onto the display, and whilst the scroll wheel isn't maybe as good as the one on Apple TV remote, it's far better than some and more than adequate. As previously mentioned, depending on the remote control selected, the buttons below the screen will offer different sub options when pressed. So the TV allows me to select channel numbers, whilst the AC gives me the different modes, more in fact than you'd get via Apple Home with fan speed and louver controls, for instance. Another handy feature is if you lift the remote in a darkened room, the buttons and screen will light up, which I find pretty handy. Onto the pros and cons, and whilst there's a lot to like with this remote, there are a couple of question marks regarding it. Let's start with Matter, and whilst it's exposed to Apple Home via Matter, the device itself isn't actually a Matter device, so you will need their hubs for this. Still, anything that pushes Matter forward is a plus in my book. I've never used a remote of this type, but I do like the contextual screens and buttons, as well as the multi-level menus. And with the decent display, it does make it fun to use, at least for a tech head like myself. Nearly everybody is used to using remote controls, so for those less inclined to utilise the smart home, I think this is a decent halfway house solution to please both types of users. Now, I do like the design, and let's be honest, there are plenty of overly complex remotes that we've gotten with our devices in the past, so this is a lot simpler and intuitive in my opinion. We'll see how the wife gets on with this for the ultimate test though. I can't ignore the fact that for many, the idea of reaching for a device when we should be either getting our smart homes to automate a lot of stuff or at least letting voice control do most of it, it is a bit strange. That said, there's nothing wrong with additional options for controlling your home, and so why not a remote that can do more than a collection of smart buttons? The only major con for me is the continued use of Bluetooth, and because the remote uses this, it's essentially tied to a hub for the purposes of getting into Matter. With Thread and without the need for a hub, this would be ideal, but of course that may well edge out SwitchBot's current user base, so I can sort of see why they've stuck to this path, but that path is getting worn out in my opinion. Either way, it's something we've not really seen before in Matter, and so I welcome it. Let me know your thoughts on this and whether you plan on investing in one yourself. In the meantime, if you like this video and want to see more, please do give it a like. Please share on social media and do subscribe to help the channel out if you haven't done so already. In the meantime, stay safe. And in a nod to the companies that make fun devices just like this, Thomas Edison once said, "I have not failed, I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work."